We need to shed that heat. We cannot let it accumulate because it will hurt us. Eventually it'll kill us. How does that work? Let's talk about the normal mechanisms that we use to compensate for this. Okay? Remember, when I say normal, I'm talking about normal people, not firefighters. Okay? You guys do this too. The first thing that a normal person will do when they're in an excessive heat environment is they get the hell out of it. Okay? That's one of the first things that sets you aside from them. You can't leave. It's your job to go in there and experience that heat stress. Okay? They also can reduce their workload. So if they get in a situation like we're talking about, it's degrees of a heat index outside, it's really nasty and stuff. Most people don't go out and mow their yard. Most people find a shady spot and sit around, or they go back in the house, you know. But they don't do a whole lot of work in those kind of heat conditions. Why? Because that increased work will cause them to accumulate excess heat. So it's avoidance, if you will, these first two mechanisms. The other primary mechanism we use is sweating. Okay? If our core body temperature starts to, it actually happens before this, but primarily when our core body temperature, our core system, our hypothalamus in our brain actually starts sensing that our core body temperature is in jeopardy of rising, it will cause you to start sweating. Okay, we're not going to talk about all the hormonal aspects of that, but basically that's what happens. Your hypothalamus says, hey guys, get too damn hot in here for me, let's turn up the sweat rate. And so you start to sweat. Okay? How does sweating cool you? Okay? And this is a very, very, very important thing for you to understand, because it is the hallmark of how you guys get in trouble. This word right here, evaporating sweat. Sweat that runs down your nose and drips off, or runs down your arms and drips off, or gets absorbed into your turnout gear, or gets absorbed into your station wear, does virtually nothing to cool you. Just the production of sweat doesn't cool us. The sweat has to come onto the skin surface, and then it has to evaporate. Okay? Basic physics. When you take something from a solid state like ice and go to a liquid state like water, okay, there's heat involved. That process causes a transfer of heat. You have to transfer heat. Same thing when you go from the water state to the vapor state, which is the evaporation of sweat. That is a process that carries heat. The heat that you use to do that comes from your body. So your body heat is used to change that sweat, the water in that sweat, to vapor. The evaporation process. Okay? And when you do that, that heat leaves your body. It's used for something else. Okay? It's used to change that sweat from a liquid state to a vapor state. If you don't do that step, then your body doesn't lose heat through sweating. Okay? Now, what are the conditions under which your body, what are the conditions you have to be in from an environmental standpoint for evaporation of sweat to occur? Okay? One of the most important things to this step is the humidity or the vapor that's already in the air around your skin. Okay? So when you're outside on a day when it's really hot and really humid, what does that mean? That means there's a lot of water already in the air. It can be almost completely saturated, and that problem arises because that makes it difficult to put any more water into that air. Okay? It makes it more difficult for this evaporation step to occur. Now, I know people from, anybody here from the Southwest, Texas, Arizona, those areas, people out there who not really very informed will tell you, oh, we don't even sweat out there. Well, yes, you do. The difference is that as soon as that sweat comes to the surface of their skin, it evaporates because there's virtually no water vapor in the air. And it's very easy for things to evaporate. Unfortunately, for those of us that live in more humid environments, it doesn't work that way. Okay? It doesn't work that way. When it's 100% humidity outside, that means the air is 100% saturated. Sweating will not cool you. Okay? What does that mean about the environment inside your turnout gear? We already said it's very hot, can be 110, 120 degrees in there, and very quickly, within 10 or 15 minutes of putting that shit on, whether you're in the fire or not, the humidity inside that turnout gear is 100%. That means you're not evaporating any sweat. And so that sweating process is not cooling you. And your core temperature is even more at risk. Your core temperature starts to go up. When your core temperature starts to go up, your hypothalamus says, crank up the sweat rate. But it's not doing any good. Okay? This is a hallmark of something that we call an uncompensable heat stress environment. In other words, you can't compensate for it. Okay? So when we talk about what goes on for the firefighters, all these things, radiative, conductive, and convective heat, very hot. You know, if you got a strap on too tight or something in the fire, you get some conductive heat through your turnout gear. That's a burn. You know, those kind of things. That's kind of a no-brainer. Those kind of environments are extreme. And this is whether or not, you know, we're also including here the environment inside your turnout gear. It's extreme. 110, 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 100% humidity is an extreme environmental heat stress condition. Okay? Your metabolism. We said this inefficient metabolic process we have doing work, the more muscular work you do, the more heat you generate. Well, the work that you guys do is extremely heavy. And so you produce a lot of heat, a lot of metabolic heat, doing your job. So the heat that's coming from metabolism, very high. Here's one most people don't think about. You know what's interesting about the air that you inhale? No matter what the conditions are out here, when the air that you breathe gets into your lung tissue, where you're actually doing gas exchange, it is going to be at least 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius and 100% saturated. If the air outside is colder and drier than that, then our lung tissue will heat it up and humidify it. Okay? But if that air is hotter than our temperature, the opposite happens. We start to, that air that we're inhaling will actually start to increase our core body temperature. Think about where that air is going. It's coming out of that SCBA bottle that's probably been sitting out in that somewhere in the bay on a day that it's 100 degrees. It's already pretty close to body temperature to start with. And then you take it into a 200 or 300 degree fire environment, and the air in that bottle starts to heat up. And now you're inhaling hot air directly into your core. Your lung tissue is part of your core body system. It's one of the things that we try to protect from this hot environment. And now we're inhaling air directly into it. Most people don't have to worry about that. Okay? So this is another thing that is very specific to firefighting. Impairment or ineffective removal of body heat. This is where you're really, really at risk. Okay. Now, If we talk about the fire room environment, we know that's very hot. There's a lot of physical activity, which causes a lot of metabolism. Things get heating up inside your gear as well as outside. Your body's response, sympathetic nervous system, which is what the hypothalamus uses to turn up the sweat rate. The first, of course, is the fight or flight issue. That's the thing about where most people get the hell out. Okay, that's why people like me are trying to run over you to get out of the burning building while you're trying to go in. Okay, we take the flight mechanism rather than the fight. Okay, this sympathetic drive system is increasing our sweat rate, and we're losing body water. Okay, it's also increasing our heart rate. Okay, we'll talk about the consequence of losing water and how that works. But when we talk about the impaired or ineffective loss of heat, this is where you guys really get in trouble. And we said something about this. Okay, sweat has to evaporate. If it drips off of you or gets absorbed by clothing, doesn't really do much. It begins to accumulate in the body. Your heat does, and the core temperature can rise very rapidly. Okay? Very rapidly, much more so than in other people. The heart rate is going to crank up for a couple of reasons. Number one, your sympathetic nervous system is driving things now, and sympathetic outflow causes your heart rate to increase. But one of the things it's trying to do is it's trying to circulate the water in your body, the blood, the water in your body, because your body acts like a radiator. Okay? It takes this hot blood that's in your core system, and it pumps it out into your extremities, out into your arms and your fingers and your toes and whatever, to try and cause sweating and the loss of heat, just like you do in the radiator in your vehicle. It circulates that water from the water jacket around the around the core of your engine out to the radiator, where you have some way to get rid of the heat. Our body works the same way. As the body water drops, the amount of body water we have in our system drops because we're sweating so much now. The heart has to try to work faster. It tries to circulate that water faster, okay, to do the same thing. It's not very effective. Okay. This is magnified in an unfit or unhealthy firefighter. Now, I know most of you are pretty physically fit, but we always have to think about the other guys on our crew. I don't have to bark at you guys about the statistics, the death statistics with firefighters. How do half the firefighter line of duty deaths occur in the United States per year? Heart attack. If you look up in the USFA's report every year, it'll say heart attack, and it'll say the causative agent was overexertion. What does overexertion mean? Overexertion means that the body was stressed to a point greater than it was capable of working. So if you have an unhealthy heart, or you're not physically fit, that doesn't take very long under these kind of heat stress conditions to drive you to the point of overexertion. And when you get to that point, you have to do one of two things. You either have to quit what you're doing or suffer the adverse consequences, which very often are a heart attack.